This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 26th of October 2021, and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am Miss K. Again, in case you missed today's headlines, here they are. Daily Nation, Ruto pulls a fast one on parties. The Standard, MPs roll back fiery tongues. The Star, Uhuru backyard to name 2022 pick in Limuru 3, and People Daily. Tough election measures out.
Mixed bag of headlines.
It is. Yeah. But before we start our headlines today, I'd like to wish a happy 60th birthday to our president, Mr. President Kikuyu Kenyatta, Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces.
Defender of borders.
Exactly. Smasher of wheelbarrows. And the big man Bazoo himself. But let's go to our episode today.
Yes.
All right. So I want to start with the thought that actually inspired GK yesterday.
Yeah.
Why is the deputy president speaking like he has already won the race? Is this the illusion that fooled Madam Anne Waiguru? The mirage called the ground. In his Mashuja Day remarks, the DP actually acknowledged his competitors, and he assured the president that he would continue his legacy come 2022. And it got me thinking, what is fueling this man's cockiness? Are we saying that crowds and the perceived endorsement from Kikuyus is enough to guarantee William Ruto the presidency? In our view, this is flawed reasoning that must be ground-truthed. We have said that the 2022 election will be a runoff election, and we could be wrong. But could this explain why the candidates are spending so much time flirting to win the affection of central Kenya? They think that securing the GEMA voting bloc will take them over the 50% plus one threshold. We want to submit that this is a delusion. This is a mirage. Instead, a runoff is inevitable. And this is backed by history and trends. My arguments are only two. One, if the GEMA vote has become this prized possession, but there is no GEMA candidate, who is entitled to their vote? Just last week, IEBC set a target to register 1.4 million new GEMA voters. Instead, only 24,000 voters showed up. Bure kabisa. A total of 1.37 million voters simply did not care to register. What does this mean? These people who are claiming ownership over the central voting bloc are being lied to. To put it simply, Kikuyus are telling us that if they don't have a candidate on the ballot, they won't register and they won't vote. They are not boarding. Nothing. Two, the 2013 election had the highest voter turnout recorded in history of 85.9%. Of this, Uhuru Kenyatta garnered 50.53% of the vote and Raila Odinga 43.7%. But Uhuru only passed the 50% plus one threshold by 800,000 votes. Now, if we assume that GEMA turnout will be low in 2022, William Ruto's inherited voting bloc will be an illusion. Without the weight of the full GEMA vote, it is impossible for DP to win during the first round, leading us to a runoff. Remember that Raila Odinga has consistently received 44% of the vote. Baba has done it before, he can do it again. Everybody say amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen to that.
Now, a random thought while on the topic of this runoff. Uhuru Kenyatta is yet to formally endorse any candidate, but he has celebrated Raila, misled the Oka principles, and romanced the naive Mukisa Kitui into believing that he can become president. So another way to predict a runoff is to anticipate that each regional kingpin will run on his own. Why? Because if they run independently, no one gets enough votes to win by 50% plus one. So I ask, is it possible that the president knows this and is engineering a runoff and nobody is paying attention. Think about it.
That's
Some
a really
thought-provoking thoughts there. I
really
think
good
maybe the figure ought to have been 8,000 votes and not 800,000 votes that Uhuru crossed the threshold with in 2013.
It's true, it was a very small
It's a
margin.
very small margin, small error there.
Today I'd like to debunk a common delusion that Tuje is talking about, that's afflicting our political class. We call it the Kikuyu delusion, and it's based on two assumptions. The first assumption is that if the Kikuyu are with you, you will win the election. 0. The second assumption is that Kikuyus will come out and vote in large numbers in the 2022 election. Again, 0. The wholesale blanket belief in the Kikuyu delusion by the political class is the reason why everyone is trying to climb the mountain and romance the house of Mumbi. But the Kikuyu delusion is a false and unsupported belief. It is a myth, a mirage, that will disappear on 9th August 2022. And by camping in central Kenya, Ruto and Raila are romancing an illusion that will negatively affect their 2022 election outcomes. This is what Uhuru Kenyatta meant when he spoke about the mountain of mystery. Allow me to explain. So yes, it's true that because Kikuyus are many, their vote is important. But Kikuyus turn out to vote in large numbers when two things happen, and 2J said them. One, there's a Kikuyu candidate on the ballot, and 2, there is an object of aggression. This was the context in 2013 when GEMA turnout was a record 89.5%. But 2022 is a different election. There is no Kikuyu candidate, and there is no object of aggression. Therefore, the Kikuyu voter bloc will behave differently in this election. And there is evidence that GEMA's attitude towards the election has changed. So if voter registration so far is anything to go by, then Kikuyus will not turn out to vote in 2022. Central Kenya, as said again by 2J, has reported the lowest turnout in the ongoing mass voter registration. According to IEBC data, only 1% of the targeted new voters have turned up for registration. And the low voter registration is an early indication for low voter turnout in 2022. Now, the 2013 election had the highest national voter turnout at 85.69%. And Kiambu County made history because it registered almost 1 million voters, just like that. 863,000 to be precise, and 91% of them turned out to vote. Now, currently, only 1% of Kiambu has come out to register as voters in 2022. What does this tell us? It is projected that GEMA votes will be up to 7.2 million in 2022. If only 1% of the new voters have registered in GEMA, this 7.2 million voting bloc is an illusion. It will not be achieved. In fact, if we use this trend, only 29,000 GEMA voters will register at the end of IEBC campaign. It is that bad. But there's one more thing. If GEMA voter turnout drops to a projected 50% because they have no candidate or object of aggression, the total GEMA vote will be 2.5 million, not the dreamy 7.2 million votes that Raila and Ruto are chasing in the mountain. Now, this is only 2 times the Somali vote. And that is why we are calling the GEMA vote a delusion. Now, we will give unsolicited advice to Baba the Fifth. But before we do so, we want to tell Anne Waiguru that we will not talk about her. She's a total waste of our national imagination. And her decision to join UDA was inspired by the devil, like Uhuru, when he handed over to Mudavadi in 2013. But we still love her.
A kiss for Waiguru.
A kiss for Waiguru. Back to advice for Baba Man. In 2007, he had 44% of the vote. In 2013, he had 44% of the vote. And in 2017, he had 45.5% of the vote. His support base is constant. Instead of romancing the GEMA illusion, Baba should consolidate the 44% he has always had. And if he does it, the Kikuyus will follow him like a nonsense. After all, Kikuyus love zeros. Many zeros.
Well, that's a good point. What a mountain of mystery this Kikuyu nation is.
They really are.
Let me now address two additional delusions regarding the Kikuyu vote. The first is that William Ruto has inherited Uhuru's voter base in toto. In our history, in our multi-party history, there has never been a non-Kikuyu candidate obtaining the Kikuyu vote in toto. In fact, going by history, the only assumption we can bank on is a divided Mount Kenya. In 1992, they were split 2/3, 1/3 in favor of Matiba. In 2002, they were once again split 2/3, 1/3 in favor of Mwai Kibaki. So, what William Ruto can take to the bank for 2022 is a 2/3, 1/3 split. Put differently, if only 2.5 million Kikuyus are projected to vote in 2022, Ruto will take 1.65 million Kikuyus, which is half the Luya vote. And no matter how these chips fall, Ruto's goose is cooked, because for Ruto to perpetuate Kikuyu Kalenjin hegemony, he will need nothing short of 99% of central Kenya.
Yep.
The second delusion is that Raila Odinga's core support base is lost. In 2007, as you said, Ms. K, Raila Odinga obtained 44% of the vote against Mwai Kibaki's 46%. Raila did so without Kikuyus. In 2013, he obtained 44% of the vote again against Uhuru Kenyatta's 50.07%. Again, Raila did this without Kikuyus. And in 2017, he obtained 44%, slightly more maybe, of the vote. Once again, Raila managed this without, in spite of Kikuyus. Over the last 3 elections, as you can see, Raila Odinga has been consistent with his 44% support base. And these are votes from Nyanza, Western, Northeastern, Coast region. This 44% is not likely to change in 2022. Not especially when he has a supportive Mount Kenya business elite and the deep state. What is my point here? I disagree with 2J that a runoff is inevitable. The election seesaw will swing in favor of Baba Man and will thrust him to the State House during the first round.
Amen.
If voter apathy combined with voter suppression happens in central Kenya, Raila's 44% of the national vote will increase in value and actually become equivalent to the 50% plus 1 threshold. Why? Because with a lower Kikuyu turnout, the 50% plus 1 threshold will come down. And this is how Raila will win the 2022 election, round 1. Dear Kikuyus, I will now remind you of Paul's epistle to the Galatians. He wondered loudly in this letter, "Foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you that you should not obey the truth before you? You have eyes, but you do not see. You have ears, but you do not hear." Dear Kikuyus, you are important, but not so important. If you follow your bewitched ways, the foolish path will lead you to a place of gnashing teeth. And on this, be my guests.
I like that.
My guests.
They're not as important as they think that they are.
No.
We have a 3-part criteria that we use to judge the headlines for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is the headline topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful, or just plain lazy? I think that these headlines are a bit lazy.
You know what? On account of us actually bringing fresh thought to the discourse and to the conversation, I would say we just toss all of them and award ourselves the winning headline or the winning thought. I like that, but I also think that there is a misleading thought that's going on here that needs to be awarded something. The Daily Nation has Ruto putting a fast one on parties and telling them that we will do a coalition after you win.
Post.
So I think
It's
that
a foolish one.
It's a foolish idea. Very, very sneaky. Shows that he's such a cocky man who believes so much in his win that he says, when you join me, you're welcome to come and negotiate. I say we toss the rest and we keep the Daily Nation for the lies that it's peddling. And the Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. And now on to our final thought. But before we get there, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification button and the like button.
So many instructions.
So many.
And now our final thought. This week is inspired by big business. And today we start with a book entitled The Wikipedia Revolution: How a Bunch of Nobodies Created the World's Greatest Encyclopedia by Andrew Lee. So I think it's hard to imagine the internet without Wikipedia.
Yes.
And if you don't believe me, just ask our judiciary.
Yes, yes. You had to sneak them in
exactly, I had to.
Or any opportunity.
So Wikipedia, the encyclopedia that anyone can edit, is firmly in the top ranks of the top 10 most visited websites in the world. But its origins are far less known. And I think it actually represents how a good idea can lead you to a better one if you're willing to try. So in less than a decade, Wikipedia has single-handedly disrupted the world of encyclopedias. It has become so popular that people casually stumble across its content every day. Yet only a fraction of the public who use Wikipedia realize that it's entirely created by a masses of unpaid and often unidentified volunteers. So what we know today as Wikipedia was actually a mistake. The founders Jimmy Wales and Lawrence Sanger actually came up with another website called Newpedia first. So when Newpedia was created in 2000, the plan was for it to feature expert-written and peer-reviewed content. But it suffered from a major problem: a lack of speed. In the first 6 months, only 2 articles made it through the process. So to spur better production, Sanger suggested creating a counterpart that anyone could contribute to without editorial review. And that's how Wikipedia was born. So it went live on January 15th, 2001, and the new model quickly eclipsed its older sibling. So by the end of the first year, Wikipedia contained more than 20,000 articles in English, in 18 languages. And since then, the English Wikipedia alone has over 6 million articles. And then combined with the other 309 languages, Wikipedia hosts almost 55 million individual articles. But articles of that volume eventually became this nightmare scenario: how to deal with so many internet trolls and anarchists that threaten to upset the accuracy of the content. And it's not perfect. There are imposters who edit not for the greater good, but to serve for greed, vanity, ambition, or self-interest.
Yeah.
There are many weak and thinly sourced articles on Wikipedia as well. Of that 6 million entries that I mentioned, only 40,000 of them meet the standard of being called good articles.
Wow.
Can you imagine? So regardless, I think Wikipedia is now a cornerstone of life online, with the website celebrating 20 years of content this year and not looking to stop. In fact, one of the co-founders, Wales, says that he wants Wikipedia to one day contain the sum of human knowledge. The whole sum.
The whole sum, entirety.
I wish them the best.
Yeah. Now, what motivates people to take part on Wikipedia? A noted Yale law professor, Yorkie Benkler, has a theory. In a widely circulated and famous essay on the internet called Cose's Penguin, he offered his thinking on why people participate in efforts such as Wikipedia and other free digital projects in this digital age that we're living in. There was already a culture before Wikipedia of folks donating their time, their effort and skills to the collective good for no monetary gain or immediate compensation. And he termed this phenomenon the commons-based peer production. That is the phenomenon of people working together towards the same end, in this case creating computer code or content that is free to be copied, distributed, used and modified by everybody. So the question he begged was, if these people are not driven by monetary rewards, what drives them to volunteer? And according to him, the motivation comes from 2 main things. One, the social psychological reward of interacting with others, and 2, the hedonic personal gratification of the task. Wikipedia's magic occurs the author tells us, when these two things come together. One person's personal affection and indulgence, for instance, for things such as map making, grammar checking, baseball statistics, history of stamps, and so on and so forth, easily finds a home in Wikipedia's combination of topics, where it also feeds into and inspires, activities by other people. And there's never a shortage of things to do on Wikipedia: fixing spelling mistakes, grammar checking, statistics, sorting, categorization, list making. You're constantly improving the work of others. There's also no deadline and no pressure to work at a particular pace. In this sense, Wikipedia, the author is telling us, is the obsessive compulsive's dream come true. It has a bottomless pit of source material with which to indulge one's pet peeves or obsessions. But it doesn't stop there with an individual's work only. In the open and transparent Wikipedia universe of all these millions of articles that you've told us about, 2J, none of the actions people take are in isolation. They show up on the recent changes page, where they trigger notices on other people's watch lists and are seen by hundreds of passerbys who happen to find them browsing. And this leads to what the author calls the piranha effect. And that is when one person's change to the environment inspires another to something greater, causing some sort of contagion, and that effect then cascades through the entire community. And through that ecosystem, everybody keeps on participating and improving the outputs on Wikipedia.
So it's interesting, you talked about how people have that obsessive compulsive need to, join in on Wikipedia. I was reading about this one man who works for the TSA, which is our equivalent of KAA, the Airports Authority. And he is the single most editor on Wikipedia. I think he has entered or edited 300 million individual times.
Now,
so he has a job.
He has a regular job. Where he gets the time.
And he wants to contribute to Wikipedia that much. So
voluntarily.
I'd like to talk about the controversy that surrounds Wikipedia. Now, if you've ever been in school and have had to write a paper, I am sure that you have been told by your teacher or your professor categorically that Wikipedia is not a valid or reliable source.
Looks like the judges
were not listening
on that one.
No, they missed out on that. In fact, you're told not to quote it in your references or in your judgments. Now, these concerns about the reliability of Wikipedia have had to do with the validity, verifiability, and veracity of Wikipedia articles. Are the articles valid? Are they truthful? Can they be corroborated? This is because Wikipedia, as you've said, is written and edited by volunteer contributors with the editorial oversight of volunteer editors using policies and guidelines generated by themselves as a community. So can you really trust a self-regulated group of volunteers who use pseudonyms to post and who are mostly anonymous? I think not. Well, at least not at first. And one controversial story about a fake Wikipedia entry proves this. So one day in 2005, a guy called John Sigenthaler, a veteran American journalist, made a discovery that the Wikipedia article about him was not only factually incorrect, but it accused him of being part of murder. His Wikipedia article accused him of being directly involved in the assassinations of both Bobby and John F. Kennedy. Now, Wikipedia had accused him of killing a former Attorney General and the President of the United States. And what was worse, George Sigenthaler was a friend of the Kennedy family. He had worked as an administrative assistant to Bobby Kennedy. Now, John called the Wikipedia founders and they amended the article, but he was annoyed. And because he was a veteran journalist, he wrote a harsh editorial about Wikipedia on USA Today. The backlash against Wikipedia was so bad that Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, appeared on CNN to discuss the incident as part of damage control. Now, because of this controversial incident, Wikipedia fixed its policies and created a policy with guidelines on how to do a biography of a living person. In the end, although Wikipedia is not a valid source, I think Wikipedia is a good place to start your research. And that's what the owner says. Because it is the go-to destination for general information online.
Very true.
Do hope you enjoyed that. Again, our winning headline came from the Daily Nation. We didn't have a winning cartoon. And I'll end with a quote. falsely attributed to Mark Twain, also falsely attributed to a peace activist called Philip Berrigan.
Did you get it from Wikipedia, Miss K?
I think it's from Wikipedia. It's also falsely attributed to an anarchist writer named Emma Goldman. This is my Wikipedia quote. If voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel again. You can find us on Pan, Free to Air, Go TV and Star Times. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Great life at 60.